In this presentation, we'll take a look at the standard deduction for 2018. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here is our table for the standard deduction. Remember that the standard deduction will be dependent on our filing status. The standard deduction is going to be a deduction that everybody gets, and we would only not take the standard deduction if the itemized deduction, which we'll talk about later, is over and above the standard deduction. So for single, we have the standard deduction, in other words, of $12,000. Remember that these are much larger than in the prior year. This is one of the big changes that have happened, and that's going to make it easier for most people, or make it more simplified in that more people will just take the standard deduction because they will benefit from it more than itemizing. In other words, now, if we are single, if we wanted to itemize, or if we had to itemize, however you want to see it, we would need to have itemized deductions greater than $12,000 in order to see any benefit from those itemized deductions. And otherwise, it's not worth it. We're just going to take the standard deduction. So all those things that we'll talk about itemizing, most of the things that we kind of think about, like the charitable deduction or the mortgage deduction or the state taxes, they're not worth pulling together. Medical costs and whatnot, they're not worth pulling together if they're not going to be greater than the $12,000 for the single individual. And the point of that is, of course, to make things easy, to give everybody just the flat deduction, which hopefully will be more beneficial than the itemized deduction, and not require everybody to go through all the hassle of pulling that stuff together. And then we have the married filing joint, which, as would be expected, is $24,000. Same thing applies. If we want to itemize, then if we're filing married filing joint, we would need deductions that would add up to more than $24,000. Now note, the things that will typically do this, like the big itemized deduction, are usually the home or the state taxes, and the state taxes are kind of capped now too. So that means that, and we'll talk more about that later, but that means that if we don't have itemized deductions that are greater than the 24, we're just going to take the standard. And then we've got the married filing separate, which, as you would expect, would be the $12,000. We're going to split that 24 back up. Head of household, $18,000. Remember, if you're between single or head of household, this is one of the big benefits to being head of household. You have that bigger standard deduction. And then you got the qualified widow or widower, meaning we're kind of taking up the same rate as if still married for that time period in which we're qualified as a widower or widow or widower. That would be the death of the spouse, and having other qualifications, including a child dependent. So there's also going to be some changes if there's an age change. So the standard deduction increases for people who are age 65 or older or blind. So 65 or older or blind, we have different set of numbers. If a taxpayer can be claimed as a dependent by another taxpayer, the standard deduction is limited to no higher than $1,050, or the taxpayer earned income plus $350. If an individual can be claimed on another return as a dependent, really the question is, from a net tax standpoint, is whether or not the benefit to claim them as a dependent is going to be greater than the benefit if they were to file themselves without being claimed as a dependent elsewhere. And part of that calculation would be the fact that if they're claimed as a dependent elsewhere, they're going to have their standard deduction to be reduced to these limitations. These are the additional standard deductions for taxpayers who are 65 or older or blind. So single, we would have an increase of $1,600. If we're married filing joint, increase $1,300. Married filing separate, increase $1,300. Head of household, increase $1,600. And qualified widow or widower, increase of $1,300. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.